Dr. Fauci is convinced that if he told the scientific truth to the American people, then they wouldn't behave according to the way that he thought was best. And so, in all of our interests, of course, in order to save lives and all of the other noble reasons that he is no doubt constantly filling himself with, he had to lie to the American people in order to slowly bring us along to the terrible, terrible realization that none of us are really fit to look at from the beginning. Now, that alone would be disgraceful and disgusting enough if he was actually correct. But as it turns out that in virtually all of these cases, they're not only lying to us in order to get people to do what they think is best for us. In most of these cases, turns out they're not even right about that, but we'll get to that in a minute. So when Dr. Fauci makes an admission that essentially says, yes, I lied, but I lied so that we could slowly get to a point where people could face the truth. When you get right down to it, the motivation is, I'm doing this for other people's good. That's what he's telling himself. But the actual motivation, the thing behind the fig leaf, is this. I know what's going on, and these idiots not only don't know what's going on, they're not capable of knowing what's going on, and if I explained to them what was going on, they still wouldn't be able to do the right thing. And if that's the place you're coming from, and this is the battle we fight with elitists all across the board, everywhere, every day, is this attitude. If that attitude is true, then the entire idea of democracy, and I don't mean democracy in the sense of like a democracy versus a republic, I mean self-governance. If that is true, then the entire idea of self-governance is a delusion that has to be slowly phased out. The reason you'd steal an election from the American people is not because you wake up and say, I'm a supervillain and I can't wait to. No. The motivation for this kind of theft and the motivation for the acquiescence on the part of the tech companies and the mainstream media and all of the conscious motivation, the lie that they tell themselves, and they believe this, is that they are doing it for the public good. Because if they were to face the truth of their motivations, they wouldn't be able to live with themselves. There's a lot to lament about the loss of brick and mortar universities. But I'm sure there was a lot to lament about the loss of the horse as well, and the loss of sailing ships and all the rest of it. I'm sure that there were always people who said, we're really missing out on something, not having those giant billowing canvases up above us. And yes, we get across the ocean much faster now in this steamship, but we're really giving up something important. And we never experienced it, so we have no way to know. In any event, I really don't see any way around it. The universities are not going to be recovered. I'm not telling you that's an absolute fact. I'm just telling you that I'm convinced it is. And so we know the power of education. We know the value of education. We have an ocean of information out there, and we have large numbers of people. And this is the final piece of the puzzle. And that is America's greatest resource is its retired people. Everybody says its greatest, your greatest resource is your children. No. They're the greatest potential, and they are the things that the resources need to be applied to. But if you don't apply any education or any structure or civilization to children, then they're just feral animals who will destroy anything that you built. Now, it's retired people that are the great resource of this nation because they have real world skills and they have real world experience, and they've got 50 years of it. And it is to the retired people that we're going to have to look to put in the pieces of structure that come from their imagination and their experience and their wisdom to help create a set of constantly evolving questions, a series of questions that can be answered by the collective wisdom and intelligence of the human species, which is available now on the internet if you know where to look. In the rare case where somebody is called out to lay out the white linen and cut the belly, and they refuse, it's not only not the end of their career. Their sales usually are multiplied by a factor of 7. Was it Goya beans? I don't remember the name. I think that was it. Got called out by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for some violation of woke code, and they basically said you can pound sand, and the next thing you know, they're billionaires. Because there's still enough people in this country who are disgusted by this kind of thing to stand up for anybody who stands up. If you stand up and say what you need to say, which everybody should have said, which should have been said from the beginning, which is F off, you insane, neurotic crybaby. You need to get some professional psychological help. If every single thing out there offends you, then you are mentally ill. And if you think I'm going to run my life based on what the most sick, insane people out there are watching me to say, you are out of your effing mind, go to hell. Is there anything else I can add to clarify that? That should have been the attitude of every single person from the beginning, every single offense. That's exactly, precisely what the American attitude to this kind of seppuku should have been, but that's not what happened. We've taken it into our culture the same way as everything else. Now, before I go on about the underlying cause of this, I do want to make one thing perfectly clear here. This applies to people, and this entire ritual applies to things that were done either unintentionally, lightheartedly, or with a full awareness of the fact that, yeah, I'm just going to troll somebody, it's just going to piss them off, so I'm going to do it because I feel like it, because I'm an American, I can say whatever I want to. This is different than a genuine apology. I want to be as clear about this as I can be, because this is an important distinction. I have occasionally had to issue a genuine apology to somebody. And a genuine apology doesn't look anything like seppuku. But a genuine apology is not just, hey, sorry about that. A genuine apology, if you've done something wrong, if you've actually made a mistake, or you've done some damage to somebody that either you didn't intend to do or you now regret. You're driving drunk and you run into a car and you kill somebody, for example. That requires a genuine, heartfelt apology. And that is not enough, as everybody knows, but nevertheless, that's what it calls for. And a genuine, from the heart apology is, in fact, one of the most noble and righteous and what's the word I'm looking for? It's just an ennobling thing to do. Not everyone is capable of it. A genuine apology for when you've done harm that you either did not intend to do, or that you should have known and you didn't know. Something that's your fault, in other words. Something that you're responsible for. That's a completely different story. I'm not talking about that. That kind of thing is something to be admired. That's a sign of somebody with a great deal of character, not somebody with no character, which is what the seppuku situation is. Not only do we face a fork in the road in terms of which future we're going to pick, in terms of the optimistic, technologically capable future, where people are free to spend their own money and push the frontiers of science and engineering and exploration and all the rest, versus a world where all of those things are not only shackled, but essentially destroyed by people who find that anathema. The idea that somebody could build a rocket ship and go to Mars terrifies these people, because if they did build rocket ships and go to Mars, then there would be generations of people that would be beyond their control. That's not acceptable to them. They've already seen 250 years on and off of people who were independent of the lords and the priests and the bureaucrats and the nobility and all of the rest of these petty small people whose only source of pleasure in life is making sure that no one else has any pleasure either. And so the future that we pick is not going to be picked by whether or not we have the technology to do the things like go to Mars and build these incredible devices and continue on this amazing experience, not just the American experiment, but the human experiment, the ability to figure out what happened in a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, work the physics backwards. All of that is going to be dependent on what happens in this next decade. I firmly believe that. We are either going to see in this next decade, I'm recording this on the 31st of December, 2020. It's the last year of the day of the year. It's the last day of the decade. 2021 to 2030 will determine whether or not this kind of kudzu of of progressivism and bureaucracy and smallness and cheating and lack of respect for rules, lack of respect for common people, all of it. Whether that smothers this Promethean flame or whether it doesn't, whether the flame burns it away, we're going to know in the next decade. We're going to know. And I still maintain that this is something that is more likely to turn out well than badly.